The Family Bed is the 18th episode of the second season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Steve Zuckerman, and as always, there will be spoilers from now. As I talk about what happens in the episode, I'll go through things chronologically and share some thoughts along the way. And this one starts off with Ray squealing in bed and basically falling, kind of flinging himself out of the bed. And it turns out that Ali has kicked him. She's crawled into their bed without them realising, and apparently this is actually becoming a bit of a habit. And this is what the episode is about. And actually, unusually, for the first time, I think, or at least it's very rare, I am in agreement with Ray. I don't think Debra handled the situation throughout the episode very well at all, and it's very unusual for me to side with Ray's parenting techniques rather than Debra's. But I'll get in with that in a little bit. We then have, presumably the next night or the next evening, Ray and Debra are tidying up the kids' toys. They've gone to bed. They're throwing the toys at each other playfully. It's quite good fun. And then Ali appears on the stairs and she says that there are monsters in her room. So she asks if she can sleep in their bed. And Ray is reluctant for this to happen because it is becoming a habit. And Debra says yes, which is something I do not agree with at all, because she didn't even try to get Ali to go back to her own bed. And if you do allow a child to sleep in your bed, it becomes a habit and it becomes harder to get them to stay in their own bed. And also by telling Ali, yes, you can sleep in my bed, you're basically saying, yes, there are monsters. You're basically confirming her fears. And it's not so much the fact that Debra was exhausted and fed up and just said yes for the night. This is something that Debra kind of keeps up throughout the episode. So it is unusual for me to side with Ray's parenting decisions, but that's certainly the case here. And we also have a very almost awkward moment where Ray says that he doesn't want her in the bed because he has to work the following day. And he is about to say to Debra, you don't have to work, but he catches himself. Because obviously Debra is a stay-at-home parent, but she's a stay-at-home parent to very young children. And Ray managed to catch it before things went too far. The following day, Ray goes over to Frank and Marie's. He has a sore back, and Frank is there eating his stone-cold eggs that Marie refuses to heat up, but as soon as he eats them, she tells him he can't eat them cold and heats them up anyway. It definitely seems like a regular occurrence in their house. And we have a moment that did not play out the way that I was expecting. Ray has this sore back, and Robert tells him that he'll just give him an adjustment, and Robert, being much larger than Ray, stands behind him and basically envelops himself around Ray and does goodness knows what to Ray's back, and Ray is doubled over at the end of it, and Robert asks, better? And I genuinely thought Ray was going to say, actually, yes, that is better. I thought it was going to be a kind of surprise situation, but it surprised me in another way, where Ray said, no, and it's just not what I was expecting. We then find out with Marie and Frank talking about how they parented when Ray and Robert were children. We learn that they actually gave Robert alcohol to make him go to sleep, which is definitely not a good idea, and Robert's not exactly happy about it either. Frank then suggests tough love, and I feel like, personally, it would be a middle ground between Debra's approach and Frank's approach. I feel like Debra is giving in far too quickly. Frank's approach, maybe a little bit too harsh, so a middle ground. And I feel like Ray's approach was a middle ground, but apparently nobody else seems to agree with him. We then have nighttime again, and Ali is calling out, and she's trying every tactic to get her parents' attention, and she says she's hungry at one point, and then nobody responds to her for a bit, and she just says, hello, and I absolutely loved it, and I really disagreed with what Debra did, and I don't like Debra for the next couple of minutes, because she decides she's going to go and sleep in Ali's room, whereas I think she should have gone through and comforted Ali, shown her that there were no monsters, and then maybe sat with her until she fell asleep again. But Debra basically made things awkward for herself without needing to, because she slept on the floor in Ali's bedroom, and there was absolutely no need for her to do that. And the following morning, Ali has had a good night's sleep. She's bouncing on the sofa. Debra is snapping at Ray, basically saying that it's Ray's fault that she had to sleep on Ali's floor. No, Debra, it's your fault for giving in to your child's demands. And I feel like Debra was being, again, unusually. I don't think her attitude was very helpful. I don't think that she was right to do what she did. I think that, yes, she should have maybe gone to Ali, but just automatically thinking, well, there are only two options. Ali sleeps in our bed or I sleep on Ali's floor. I feel like there were other options there. So it is very unusual for me to completely disagree with Debra's approaches. But unfortunately, that is the case here, and it's kind of frustrating to see. That being said, I don't think Ray did everything right either, because the following night, Debra has gone to bed early. Ray is putting Ali to bed. And initially we don't see this, we just see Ray tucking Ali in, and then after a few seconds we see Marie. And Ray has asked Marie to come over and sit with Ali through the night so that he and Debra can get just one good night of sleep. And to be honest, I don't think Ray should have gone behind, well, he definitely shouldn't have gone behind Debra's back. But I also feel like if Ray had just said to Debra, why don't we ask if the children can have a sleepover at my parents' house, or at least Ali can have a sleepover, I think Debra would have gone for that. At that point, I think she would have gone for anything to have a good night of sleep. But obviously Ray going behind her back was not the way forward. Marie was very sweet about it, though. She even said, are you sure this will be all right with Debra? She's clearly worried about Debra's opinion, which is not something that we see that often. Ray tells her it'll be fine as long as she's out by 5 a.m. And Ray then goes to bed with Debra. And Ray is really overselling the efforts he made to get Ali to go to sleep. And it seems like he's got away with it. Ray and Debra go to sleep. And then there's a knock at their bedroom door. And understandably, Debra thinks it's Ali. And it's Ray's night to deal with the situation. So she tells Ray. And Ray calls out to Ali. He thinks it's probably Marie. But he calls out as if he's talking to Marie. And I think the next bit is very unpredictable as well. Nobody responds, but the door bursts open, and it's Frank. Frank is looking for Marie. And then Ali comes running into the bedroom saying that Grandma's turned into a monster, and Marie runs in with her face cream on, and Debra looks understandably baffled at this point because obviously she didn't know that Marie was staying in the house. And then Marie and Frank get into a bit of an argument, and Frank is shouting, but while shouting says, I just can't sleep without you. And it's so sweet and diffuses things between Marie and Frank, and off they go. And Debra is understandably annoyed at the situation, but in an interesting twist, Ray actually wants Ali to stay in the bed now because he knows that if they're alone together, Debra is really going to get annoyed at Ray. So Ali gets to stay there. And then the next thing we know, the twins are there and they're bouncing on the bed, and it's just exhausting watching it, but in the most fun way. So it's definitely a really good episode. But at the same time, I don't like disagreeing with Debra's approaches. It rarely happens. So when it does happen, it feels uncomfortable, but it's obviously not the fault of the episode. I think they explored a lot of different things, and I feel like it's probably quite relatable for a lot of people. I think there are some good takeaways. One, don't sneak your mother into the house without telling your wife or partner or whoever that you're doing that. But also, from my perspective, don't make yourself sleep on your child's floor where there were other options and then take it out on your partner the following morning, because it's not a pretty sight. It doesn't work well at all. And the biggest message, of course, is that a lack of sleep makes people really nasty and really negative towards each other. Do everything you can to get a good night's sleep, apart from bringing Marie into the house without anybody knowing, because it doesn't end well for anybody. Except for maybe Ali and the twins, who got to spend time in their parents' bed. All things considered, as much as I don't love disagreeing with pretty much everything Debra did in this episode, the family bed is still a really good episode.